Hello everybody, welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Please leave your bias at the door and join us for another season review. We're getting through them pretty quickly, and today we're going to be looking at Reading, who yesterday saw their playoff chances finally slip away. Yes, I know the season's not finished yet, but the story has for Reading, and with 2 games to go, that story can pretty much be told, and we're going to have a go at it today. An interesting season at Reading, mixing an incredible start, maybe some inflated expectations, a regression to the mean, a sense of disappointment for Reading fans, but actually big picture, quite a big improvement, whatever happens in the final 2 games. So it's a bit of an interesting one, I'd suggest. Let's have a look. So, first thing that happens, Mark Bowen replaced by Veljko Paunovic. This was right late in August, quite close to the season beginning. It was, what's the word? It was an appointment that was looked upon again with suspicion. Remember, the last appointment was Mark Bowen moving from technical director or sporting director or whatever the title was into the management position. That was viewed very suspiciously, and then Mark Bowen actually did very well, didn't he? Took Reading, and his points per game, if they'd have ridden it out across the whole season, they'd have probably been in the top half. I think they ended up finishing 14th. Then we got this summer restructure at Reading, where Dai Young ended up, I think, taking Mark Bowen's job. Nigel Howe would have been, I think, was he CEO, and he got moved to there was a lot of sideways shuffling, and then Mark Bowen, who in the end is just going to leave, was, I think, supposed to go back to his old position with a kind of different title. It all felt a little bit corporate restructuring. But anyway, the long and the short of it, in comes Veljko Paunovic, Serbian manager. I, like many people, knew absolutely nothing about him. But he'd been working over in MLS, although he hadn't had a job for a little while before. So, I don't know, fair suspicion, unfair suspicion, not a big name, and a lot of slip-slidey corporate restructuring, which fans don't tend to like, do they? So in comes Paunovic, and here is the summer business. Ovi Ejaria comes in, 3.5 million. That was a loan converted. I think when we're ranking transfer dealings, no one can deny that that's a good deal, can they? A very good price for Ejaria, who the loan, prove yourself to buy, and a good asset. And then Josh Laurent from Shrewsbury, excellent, very, very good signing. Picked up from the lower leagues. Says free transfer there as well. He's played tons and tons of games for Reading this season. Lewis Gibson, okay, loan cover. Semedo and Estevez, good age. Benfica and Porto there. Not necessarily first teamers, but backup. What I think we should say about the incomings at Reading is it's decent. The Ejaria thing was sensible, not risky compared to some deals we've seen in the Championship before. And the Laurent signing is a home run, isn't it? So the incomings were good. The outgoings, Mo Barrow, Charlie Adam, Tyler Blackett. I guess if they've let the contracts run down, then so be it. Holsgrove, Loader, Manone, Gunter, Popper. So a bit of a sense that they were going to go with last year's squad with a little tweak. No massive, like George Puskas was the year before. No Lucas Zhao. No massive, right, here's a big lot of money on one player. Obviously 3.5 for Ejaria is a big lot of money in Championship terms. But given that he'd already done the loan spells there, it made a lot of sense. So I'm going to give him a thumbs up for the summer recruitment. And this is where we get into a little bit of an area where I'm not sure. As in to understand, did they underachieve last season and was the squad already good enough? And did they know the squad was good enough? Or have they really improved this season? I don't know. Maybe we get some comments in on that. And there is Paunovic's plan. And that is the team that plays in the first game. And I just want to say, we often hear managers criticised. He doesn't know his best team, quote. Looked like Paunovic did right from the word go. Remember, he's not been there long. Maybe he'd done a lot of research prior to this and knew he was getting the job. But look, let's just go through that. Raphael, Yidam, Morrison, Moore, Richards, Rinomota, Laurent, Ejaria Swift, Elise, and you can kind of switch him around with Yaku Maite as well. Lucas Zhao up top. You have to say, looking at that, he has a system, and with the benefit of hindsight, completely round pegs in round holes all the way around. And it appears that he knew what he wanted to do, and he knew what the best team was immediately. I think he was kind of right that that is the best way to utilise that Reading squad. So that was his plan. And boy, did it go well to begin with. Just an incredible start from Reading. The sort of start, really, that we get from teams that end up scoring 100 points and winning the league by miles. 7 wins and a draw in the first 8 games. 22 points in 8. And they're actually 7 points clear after 8 games. Just a sensational start. And you start to be making projections very early with a start like that, where I remember doing it myself, saying, look, they only need to maintain this level now for the rest of the season, which is, you know, if you add a stellar start like that to just upper mid-table form for the rest of the season, you're getting in the playoffs, aren't you? Add the two together. So it was an incredible start. I've put the XGs up there, which might madden Reading fans and people that seem to have some strange issue with a probability statistic, but I'm going to use it anyway. And I think all we want to prove with XG is that Reading's finishing was off the chart in those opening games. Look, 1.3 against Derby and 2 goals, 0.77 against Barnsley, 2 goals, 0.73 against Cardiff, 2 goals, 0.48 against Watford, 1 goal, a 0-0 draw then, 0.6 against Wickham, 1 goal, 1.43, that's high, isn't it? And 3 goals against Ruddock. Look at the last one, 0.5 and 4 goals. So, look, whatever you think about what seems to be a fairly straightforward probability statistic, in my humble opinion, Reading was scoring everything at the start of the season. Their finishing was incredible. So, look, let's just say it was a brilliant start. A lot went right, and full credit for that. They did seem to set themselves, though, some pretty unattainable standards, particularly as finishing is going to sort of figure out as the season goes on. My team Ipswich did this in 2017-18, at top of the league after 5 games, literally scored every shot they had. I'm not saying that there's any amount of luck to that. I'm just saying it's a difficult standard to keep. What you would rather have is lots of chances created with lots of goals, because that tends to shake out as we go. Christmas come down there, and I mean, it's an immediate come down, actually. Look at that, 4 straight defeats, and that last one as well. I did that as a watch along there against Bournemouth, where they were 2-0 up. So you look at that portion of games now. So you got 7 defeats in there, 2 draws and 3 wins. So quick maths says 9, 12. So 3 wins in the next 12 actually drops Reading outside of the playoff positions. You can see Norwich have then had a run akin to Reading's to go all the way up to 43 points there. But big picture wise, they're only 3 points off 3rd position there, with Bournemouth and Norwich a little bit further out. But regression to the mean? I don't know. It's a bit of a bumpy one. If you were going to chart out the points per game, it would be going like that a little bit. They're hanging on in there though, and a couple of good runs, and this takes us all the way up to the end of March. You can see Norwich have gone into the distance on the table there on the top of the league. Watford are also in the midst there of a great run to go second. Swansea and Brentford are in their regression. Barnsley and Cardiff are going to have streaks. I think Cardiff might already have had theirs at that point. Barnsley's just continues. And Bournemouth are pre-streak. And that is important. Very important as it pertains to Reading's playoff future. But that's a decent enough run, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 8 wins in there, 3 draws and 4 defeats. 8 wins in 15. It starts to make you think, if the run after the winning streak had been anything like that, they would have been much more comfortable. It does appear that there were 2 key runs. We're going to come on to one of them in a minute. And this wasn't it. This was actually the kind of hang in there. We're going to talk about injuries in a little bit, but this is a bit of the time where Yaku Maite does get on the pitch. Okay, John Swift doesn't. Omar Richards had a timeout and Liam Moore, and they kind of get back during this period. And that slide I put up that said Pauno's plan, well, they start to be able to get a bit closer to that on the pitch. However, there's the final slip, and it's a decisive one, isn't it? I always say in a run-in, draws will kill you. They will absolutely kill you. And look at that. 6 draws in 9 games. We've just 1 win in 9 over Slip, Slidey, Derby. And we've mentioned streaks. We then need to factor in that Barnsley keep on winning and Bournemouth go on an incredible streak at the same time as Reading are winning 1 game in 9. And it all shakes out. And look at it. It looks pretty decisive after that, given Reading have gone one way with 9 points in 9. And Bournemouth, well, they had 7 straight wins. So, I mean, do a bit of basic maths. They've got at least 21 points in those 9. Probably 22. Very similar to Reading's start to the season. In fact, that is the final slip, which takes us to where we are. And Reading missing out on the playoffs and this sense of disappointment. But when you actually, as I've said a couple of times, look at it big picture, it is an improvement. It's almost a reverse of, I always remember getting on a flight and the captain said, oh, we're going to be delayed for 3 hours. And then 5 minutes later, he said, we're only going to be delayed for 1 hour. And I remember my friend said to me next week, oh, that's clever, Ben, isn't it? What they did was they set your expectations and then they reset them. So they set us up for disappointment. We're going to be delayed for 3 hours. Then when we were delayed for 1 hour, we were happy about being delayed. So a simple resetting of the expectations. And I think that's a little bit the case with Reading this season. The other way round. It was, oh, we're going to be 3 hours early. Actually, no, we're not. We're only going to be 1 hour early. And now you're disappointed with being 1 hour early. Anyway, I'm into the realms of silly analogies. Let's look at why and kind of try and have a little bit of an analysis of the season. So, what went wrong, I've put. And again, you can argue nothing went wrong because big picture, they've improved. Yeah, where they finished 7th or 8th or whatever. I think they can only go one place down, can they? Check the table. There's still a big improvement from 14th. So what went wrong? Take that with a pinch of salt. I don't want any Reading fans getting emotional about that that wording. But look, early season overperformance is very, very clear. Look, they were 14th last season with a points per game of 1.21. In those first 8 rounds, the points per game went up to 2.75, which is just insanity. It would have been like 120 points or something they scored if they'd ridden that out through the season. And then, in the remaining games, it went down to an improvement over last season, but still to, well, under half of what it was. And the expectation increase was just unattainable. It was just an absolute purple patch, wasn't it, at the start of the season? We saw the XG and the finishing performance was brilliant. They were winning tight games, defending well. Everything was converting into a victory. And it does just feel a bit of a sense that that was going to be unsustainable. And of course, we've mentioned the psychology. What that does then to the expectations of players, fans, etc., is it changes them. If Reading had put that streak at the end of the season, they would be coming from the middle of the table and everyone would laud the season, wouldn't they? And say, oh, what a finish and how excited we are for next season. But when it goes the other way round, a different thought entirely. Injuries and depth. And before I go into this, I understand every club and team has injuries, especially in a COVID season. But, I'm going to sound like George Orwell here, not all injuries are equal. And they affect clubs disproportionately, don't they? For example, if your key players are injured, that is very different than having one key player injured for a month is probably more desirable than having 5, middling players injured for 2 months. Because that key player can really carry you and increase your points total, whereas, the others are just part of a wider picture. And it's, do you get injuries all at the same time? And Reading did that as well, didn't they? I remember Zhao, Richards and Moore were all out for at the same time in that run in Christmas. And then, of course, John Swift. Look, let's pop that up. So Raphael played the season, didn't he? Richards, Moore and Morrison across the back. I mean, Richards has missed 8 and Moore has missed 13. And Morrison, who's currently out, has missed 8. And they've just struggled to get them all on the pitch. Iain has only played 16 this season. So he has missed, quick maths, 28 of the games. Central midfield, brilliant. Look at that. You can't ask more than that, can you? They've played virtually every game, Laurent and Rinamota. And then, look at those two in the three off the front. Maite and Swift. 18 for Maite starts and 8 for Swift. Ajari's got 36, so he's still missed 9. Lucas Yao, 34, he's missed 10. Look, I haven't put Michael Elise in there, but you know as well as I do that with a 19-year-old player, the plan for Michael Elise would have probably been, right, in and out, drip him in, get him rested. And they've had to put Michael Elise in loads. And I just think when you talk about key players, Maite and Swift particularly, Swift in terms of chance creation, I know Elise has been very good, and Maite in terms of goals. There's, other than Zhao and Maite, there's only a 6-goal scorer. So I think Maite, what do you have? 18 starts, 11 goals. How many does he score if he plays the whole season? So affected by injuries to key players. And I mean, if we look at that from a Norwich or a Watford point of view, they've been promoted. Imagine giving Buendia 18 games for Norwich or giving Sarr 18 games for Watford. I think you'd probably take a few points off the total. You want your key players, particularly as it pertains to creating and scoring goals, fit for the season, don't you? And they didn't have the depth to cover, particularly Maite and Swift. And again, I do accept the caveat. Elise has been extremely good, hasn't he? Fine margins I've put in. I know you could probably say fine margins about any team that doesn't essentially win or finish at the top. But there have been some. If you look, they set up with a tight defensive structure. The XG against was 43.3, which is the second best in the league, but 48 conceded. So they just slightly underperformed the defensive XG. Still good. What I'm saying is sometimes when you set up in a defensive... I mean, they're not an overly defensive team, Reading, but there is a big sense Lauren and Rinamota are going to sit and try and get the fullbacks forward. They don't exactly bomb forward, do they? And they do strike me as a team that's very solid. They're very good at getting back in shape. And maybe you do sacrifice a little bit in terms of attacking intent for doing that. The teams that create the most chances tend to be really on the front foot a lot. And Reading tried to be balanced and at their best were perfectly balanced in those first 8 games. But at their worst would maybe just drop back in a little bit, if that's a fair criticism. Over-reliance on Zhao for goals given injuries to Maite and Swift. And it goes back to the injuries one, doesn't it? They were totally reliant on Lucas Zhao getting the goals, weren't they? Ejaria, okay, at least got some long ranges from outside the box. Ejaria is more a dribbler and bringing people into play. Maite is a goal scorer and Zhao is a goal scorer. And yes, Zhao got a lot of goals, but ultimately could have done with a bit more help, i.e., from Swift, maybe creating a few more chances for other players and for Zhao, and Maite chipping in with goals himself. And then to that point, missed chances, and we can do this with every team, but I've watched Reading a fair amount. Missed penalties in the games against Birmingham, Preston and Wickham. And against Preston, that was literally 3 points if they stuck the late penalty. In Wickham, they ended up losing the game. Birmingham, they ended up losing the game. And then remember the open goal against Barnsley that Lucas João put round the post. Had they won that game, would things have been different? That would have been 3 points off a direct rival. It's very easy to say, and generally teams that don't finish in the top six don't play the fine margins or the big moments. Well, that's why they're not there. But there's a few of those moments where you think, if that just plays out very slightly differently, you can switch a couple of places, can't you? So, what next? Next season, hey? There's some quotes from Kieran Maguire there. Reading have put their books in. Impact of FFP means they've got very little room going forward. They'll be very close to the limit of their actual trading losses over the past 3 seasons, are quite high. Pre-tax loss over the last 3 seasons is 93 million, which far exceeds the FFP limit, but they've sold the stadium, generated through some money through some grants and other bits. I strongly suggest that won't be the case because they will have legacy issues of players on big contracts, and those losses give them no opportunity to reinvest in the squad in terms of big wages. We just got to paint the financial picture, haven't we? Reading, they've been a little bit on the verge of FFP. We've heard about soft embargoes and things of that nature. Obviously, everyone's lost a ton of money this season, haven't they, with COVID and no gate receipts and commercial revenues dropping off a cliff with the stadiums empty. Presumably some extra costs as well on top of that are COVID related. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I know they've probably got some very clever people at Reading, accountancy-wise, and trying to stay on the right side of FFP, but it does feel like there's going to have to be a big sale or a couple of sales and then a restructure and a go again. By the way, I always try and calm fans of teams when I say that. That's not a bad thing. Most teams that get promoted in the season or the 2 seasons before sell a big player. Unless you've got parachute payments in the Championship, you've got to sell somebody. You absolutely have to, because nobody makes any money and the whole system is broken. And we all know this, and hopefully we're going to get some widespread reform here. And of course, Reading have been one of the teams. Yes, they did have parachute payments on their last relegation, 2012, 13, 14, around that time. But obviously that was at the time when they were for 4 years rather than 3 years. So less money each year. So you don't have that big first 2 seasons to capitalise, 42 million and 35 million as things stand. They didn't manage to make the advantage. Got very close with Jaap Stam, didn't they? And now they're in the same bull pit with everybody else. Obviously, there are assets, and that's a good thing for Reading. Omar Richards, that's a shame, because they're not going to get any money for him to Bayern Munich, are they? And then I would suggest it's Michael Elise, isn't it? Michael Elise, John Swift, Lucas João, Ovi Ejaria, George Puskas. But let's be honest, the big money for one player would be Michael Elise, wouldn't it? That might be the example of, how they can slide out one player, hopefully keep the wolf from the door FFP-wise, and move forward next season. So, that is my thoughts on Reading. Just missing out on the playoffs. I think my big take-homes are, yes, there is a sense of disappointment among Reading fans, but were the expectations disproportionately, unrealistically affected by that brilliant run of the first 8 games? I think big picture, they've gone from 14th to, they're probably going to finish in 7th. I know there's a scenario where they could slip down a place or 2. I should double check the table, really, shouldn't I? But I think big picture, they're looking good, and they're in a position where, at least they have got the assets if they do need to raise money to kind of move the recruitment wheel a little bit next season and help push in that regard. We've seen teams, and I kind of think of Middlesbrough, I know they were running out of parachute payments, where they didn't really have any saleable assets, and then there was a huge drop-off into a relegation battle the next season. So it could be a lot worse. I think big picture, Paunovic has done well. I think there's the makings of a decent first 11, but they may have to cash their chips on a player or two, FFP and just sort of turnover and cash flow wise, and have a go again next season. And then again, in come another 3 teams from the Premier League. And by the way, the Premier League are going to give them 45 million quid broadcast money. So the churn begins again for clubs competing in this slightly skewed wealth distribution. Slightly skewed, let's be honest about it. Massively skewed wealth distribution down in the Championship. Anyway, let me know what you think on that stuff. That is my review of Reading this season. Get your responses in the comments. Love to hear from Reading fans on it. What do you think? What are your takeaways? And look, Reading fans are going to know the season better than I. I cover 30 teams and they're purely focused in on the one. So talk to me about what next. What would you do next? You know, if you could get 25, 30 million for a lease and bank 15 of it and spend 8, 9, 10 of it, what would you do? Let me know in the comments, and hit subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. There's going to be plenty more of these videos. We've got to do 30 season reviews. By the way, Norwich is already up. Watford is already up. I'm kind of going through the teams where stuff finishes first, and I thought Reading would be in this gap after yesterday's events. Thank you, everybody, for watching. That was Reading's season review playoffs. Slip away. Over and out. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel. Hit the subscribe button, and to be notified every time we upload, ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/Benjamin Bloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another video.